Welcome, everyone. Good evening and welcome. This is our second public meeting for Steelhead, Game Fish, and Trout rulemaking for coastal Washington. I think I'll give it just a minute here and wait for the numbers of participants to kind of level off as everyone's jumping the meeting, and then we'll jump onto the meeting and then we'll get started. Leah, please let me know when those numbers start to even out.
I sure will. Okay, Chad, I think we are good to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Leah. So good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is our second public meeting for Steelhead, Game Fish, and Trout rulemaking for coastal Washington. So thanks, everyone, for taking time out of their busy schedules away from work or your families or anything else that you might be doing to come spend the evening with us and talk about fisheries. We really appreciate everyone's engagement in this. It's been really awesome so far. Our first meeting that was held on July 17th, where we started talking about this. We had about 62 people attend that meeting. And since that time, we've been able to have, I think we've got, as of earlier this morning, about 73 comments that have been logged onto the website so far. So that's really exciting. We're really excited about all that engagement and how much people are willing to take time out of their schedules to participate and talk about this with us. So with that, I think we'll jump right into some rules and etiquette, and then we'll get started with tonight's meeting.
Okay, hi everybody. We'll go over the guidelines, same as usual. No big changes. Please note the following. Upon joining the virtual meeting, your microphone will be muted automatically. In case of any technical issues during the meeting, notify us in the chat and we will help you. Please note the chat will only be monitored for technical assistance. Public comments are welcome and will be rotated between new commenters and people who would like to comment multiple times. To ask a question or make a comment, please use your device's raise hand feature. If on the phone, dial *9 on Zoom. Dial *9 on Zoom, and if using a computer, click the hand reactions icon at the bottom of your screen. During the comment period, the host will enable you to unmute yourself. You can then unmute yourself by pressing the mute button on your device or dialing *6. Keep the discussions focused on the agenda items and questions at hand. Offensive, disrespectful, or derogatory language, including profanity, personal attacks, threats, or insults towards individuals, governments, or organizations is strictly prohibited. Assume positive intentions from those speaking and listen respectfully. To ensure there is plenty of time to hear from everybody, limit your comments to 3 minutes. Provide constructive feedback regarding the regulations that are proposed and discussed. Remember that the most compelling comments are those that pertain to the topics under discussion. WFW staff may close public comment to stay on schedule with the agenda or to provide others who still need to comment with an opportunity to speak. The meeting will be recorded and posted online. If you have further questions or comments, please submit them in written format on our public comment webpage.
Thank you, Leah. So I'll start us off here. We've got a pretty quick, short presentation for you all tonight, and then we'll jump into the public comment portion of the meeting. We've reserved the majority of the time to hear from you, the public, on what you'd like to see for these rulemaking proposals moving forward. So a little bit of just meeting outline for tonight. We'll start off with a little bit of overview of the rulemaking, why we're here. We'll discuss some of those initial proposals that we that we rolled out at that July 17th meeting that I mentioned earlier. We'll cover some of the feedback and comments that we heard both at that meeting and have received online. And then we'll run through some of our revised proposals that we're ready to share this evening. We'll remind everybody kind of the rulemaking timeline, and then, like I said, we'll reserve the majority of the time this evening to hear folks' additional proposals and public comment on what we've produced so far. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Salmon and Steelhead statewide Senior Policy Advisor, Mark Botzel, to round out the presentation for us.
Thank you, Chad, and good evening, everybody. I'm going to just quickly walk through a number of things before we get started on public comment this evening. Just try to give folks a little bit of a background of how we got here. So as we've talked over in some previous meetings, the current regulations haven't been updated in a while. We've had some recent downturns in stock productivity, and we've had to use emergency regulations quite a bit in the recent past. So we've got a number of things that we're trying to consider as we consider regulation changes through this rulemaking process. Really, as I said, we're just looking at examining the current regulations and seeing how a number of the things that we're trying to think about and contemplate for now and into the future. We're doing this through a commission process, which is pretty comprehensive. Lots of opportunities for people to provide comment and feedback to the department and the commission. Again, we've chosen to focus this rulemaking on the coastal systems, really from the Elwha heading west and down the coast, down to the Bear River in the south. Next slide, Chad. So on our July 17th meeting, this is really a repeat slide from that meeting. I talked through the meetings that Chad and I had with staff and kind of the broad outlines we had as we were walking through some of the things we were thinking about. We asked staff to take a look at all these things that are in front of you on this list and consider some of the rule changes that we might want to implement as part of this rulemaking. Just very broadly, as kind of a starting point for discussion, staff proposed a March 15th kind of coastwide closure date, just as a starting point for discussion for this rulemaking. Next slide, Chad. So as part of that, and as Chad indicated, we've received lots of feedback to date, both at that meeting and since. And the list I've provided here for everybody to look at is just to give you a general flavor of a lot of the comments we received. It's really not meant to kind of point at any one comment or any kind of specific set of comments, but just give you an idea of some of the things we've been seeing. Also, if you've already provided comment, that on our website where you provide comment, you can see where other people's comments are there for you to view as well. So I would encourage folks to visit the website and go do that and provide comment for us. Next slide, Chad. So the staff meetings ahead of time and the meeting we had on the 17th really was intended to get us to tonight. And what we've done over the last week and a half or so since we last met was really kind of dig down into the details for a lot of these systems. And what we've put together for you tonight to consider is what we're calling pre-proposals. So these are really intended to kind of mirror the seasons as you would see them in the pamphlet. And you can see very clearly where we're intending or where we're proposing to make changes. In the kind of yellow highlighted section in the document, you're going to see where we're proposing a cross out or a deletion. All the red markings within the document are intended to be additions or changes to the rules. And you'll be able to search through the document by area. So it's broken down by North Coast, Mid Coast Grace Harbor, and South Coast Willapa. So you can search by area and by river system and even down to the section. So for this, it's the lower section there from the mouth to Fuller Bridge in the Chehalis in this example. Next slide, Chad. So I'm going to just walk you through kind of the current broad flavor of the pre-proposals. And then I'll kind of get, if folks want to go to the website right now and navigate to the Coastal Steelhead Management page, the pre-proposal document is there. I'm going to give you a web address here in a few minutes. So I'll just walk through each of these areas and kind of give you a broad flavor of some of the changes that we're considering as part of this pre-proposal. We've adjusted kind of that closing date for the North Coast to March 31st for most of those systems. We had originally proposed reducing the daily limit in those systems listed here. The Hoh River is one that there's a lot of information and a lot of things we're trying to consider as we're considering regulation changes. So we've made some proposed changes in a couple sections on the Hoh. And then we've also put in some date changes on some bait restrictions within the Cloyede system. Next slide, Chad. So in the Grays Harbor kind of mid-coast systems, there's kind of a series of dates that we've settled on depending on the system, the amount of hatchery production, the kind of timing of the steelhead, and if there's even steelhead within those systems, kind of caused us to think about what we might be most appropriate for closing dates for these fish in these systems here. So we did that. We've added some selective gear rules and some other regulations. And really, as I talked about in the previous meeting, a lot of these systems didn't explicitly have steelhead dates listed in the current regulations. So as part of this rulemaking process, we're adding steelhead dates, mostly in the Grays Harbor and Willapa areas within the proposal. Next slide, Chad. And again, the Willapa area, very similar to Grays Harbor, really settling in on those October 31st and March 31st close dates, depending on the system and the reach. Again, with some of the gear restrictions, and again, adding dates to these systems within the South. Next slide, Chad. So again, I talked about this earlier, but really the intent of this pre-proposal is to provide folks a detailed description of the proposals that are going forward, at least for now. This is why we're putting this together for folks, is to elicit more feedback, to ensure that we're landing in a place that we feel comfortable moving forward to the commission with. So we're going to continue to collect comments all the way up until we file this on August 20th. And maybe, so really quickly, down here's the web address for that at the bottom of this screen here. As I said, if you visit the Coastal Steelhead Management page on the WDFW website, there'll be links there to this document, and please feel free to share with folks who aren't here tonight. Next slide, Chad. So when I talk about comments, the red arrow indicates kind of where we are in the process tonight. So as I indicated, what we're going to do is take all these comments and consider them and put together what we're calling a kind of proposed package moving forward that will go to the Fish and Wildlife Commission for consideration. We're going to file that on August 20th, or maybe a little before, but it'll get filed by August 20th. And then basically between August 20th and that late September date, that'll be published on our website as part of the rulemaking process. People will be able to provide additional comments on the rulemaking part of the website as part of this process. So we'll continue to take all those comments up through September. In September, we'll be in front of the Fish and Wildlife Commission, both to the Fish Committee to provide a briefing, and again to the full commission to do a briefing and then hold a public hearing about these proposed rules. So I did want to make folks aware of something that you may not be looking this far ahead. The September commission meeting is planned to be in Wenatchee, but there is an option for folks to testify via computer or hybrid. So you wouldn't necessarily have to travel all the way to Wenatchee. Those details will be on our website as we get closer to that meeting, but I did want to make folks aware that it will be in Wenatchee for that meeting, but you will still have an opportunity to provide comment to the commission. After that commission meeting, we'll consider all the comments that we've heard from both the public and the commission about our proposed package moving forward. We'll then take that back and consider all those. And if we need to make any changes to kind of what we filed on August 20th, we'll do that within that timeline. We'll then take that back to the commission in early November there or mid-November for a final decision. After that final decision is made from the commission, we'll go ahead and get all our paperwork in order, file our regulatory documents with rulemaking, and hopefully be able to put all this together to have in place by January. Obviously, that's after the steelhead season starts, but we can have emergency regulations in place to cover us for that early season time period. Next slide, Chad. So just to summarize where we are, we're intending to consider all these rule proposals to align the season dates and population status and conservation necessity, co-manager agreements. As I stated and walked everybody through, there's going to be multiple opportunities for people to engage and comment on the proposals. So far during the process, I would say the public comments favor balancing conservation and fishing opportunity, which is what we would expect. And currently from the proposals, March 31st is the current proposed closing date in most systems. And as I stated just a minute ago, we're hoping to have all this wrapped up by early 2026. Next slide, Chad. So again, here is all the places that we have to offer you to provide comment. We're gonna probably just keep this up on the screen as we walk through the next little while and take your comment. I might just pause and ask Chad if I missed anything or if you'd like to add to anything I said, but other than that, thanks for being here and look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Mark. Thought you did a great job, covered all the bases. So appreciate you for being here and walking everybody through that and all the work that you've done behind the scenes to get us to where we are today. We wouldn't be nearly this far without you driving the bus on some of this. So huge appreciation to Mark. So with that, I think we can go to questions and public feedback. So let's go ahead and open it up.
Okay, I see we have a few hands up. Just a reminder, raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. It looks like a little hand. It may be a smiley face that says reactions. Our first hand is from Andy. Andy, go ahead.
Hello. Again, thank you for opening this up for our comments. Main thing I wanted to talk about was extending closures towards to the end of March, kind of across the board on the main rivers in each area, but it looks like that's where you're leaning to. So I'm not going to spend any time, advocating for that. I will, however, keep advocating for boat restrictions in the smaller systems. So I've spoken before. People probably already know my voice. I'm down here in Southwest Washington, and we have small rivers, and small physically, not necessarily like volume wise, although that's true too. But these rivers, there isn't, outside of like very low or tidal areas, there isn't an area that you cannot cast across. So it's very easy to fish these rivers without having to use a boat. Like using a boat to get down the river, that's great, but you can get out and fish easily, cover everything or most of it. There are areas though that you physically just cannot get out of the boat in, or you can't get out because it's private property. And I would like to see those sections of the rivers left for resting areas for the fish. I would like to ask, what is the reluctance to utilize that as a measure up front within the regulations, knowing through the work you've done on the Hoe, which is physically one of the largest and especially lower down featureless rivers on the coast as far as what could concentrate fish numbers. So what is the reluctance to use that as a regulatory tool up front?
Thanks for your comments, Andy. Yeah, I'll just address the boat thing really quickly. I think we've been pretty consistent that we're not opposed to looking at no fishing from a boat, but in certain sections and rivers. But where we are really as an agency is thinking about that on a case-by-case basis as more as a management tool that we can employ in situations where we felt like additional layers of conservation were needed. It doesn't really kind of felt like just putting that blanket approach in permanent regulations and establishing that is just the paradigm moving forward in a systematic way across all these sections wasn't really where we wanted to go. We wanted to be able to keep that in our back pocket as more of a management tool that we could employ to respond to situations on an annual or watershed basis. So that's at least how we're thinking about it right now. Not, we're early in this process as Mark laid out. We're finish all this up in November, and it doesn't mean that conversation won't change as we walk through it, but that's how we're thinking about it today, Andy. So thanks. Appreciate your comments.
There was one other thing, and this is also a trout regulation meeting too. Am I missing that? Or is it just steelhead focused?
Well, I mean, there is some game fish and trout that we're working on, but really just as a nexus for steelhead, not necessarily trying to clean up trout and game fish regulations directly without that steelhead tie-in.
Okay, and that I'll leave it there. Just at the beginning of the slide, it said, salmon, trout, steelhead regulation changes. So I notice we're all focused on steelhead here, myself included, and just wanted to see if this process was also for changes within the trout regulations.
I would say feel free to provide us that comment either here tonight or you can do that online. It'll just whether we look at that will just really depend on how much of that nexus is tied in with steelhead. That really is the focus of the rulemaking that we're trying to do.
More online then. Appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Our next hand is from Brandon. Brandon, go ahead.
Hello?
We got you.
This isn't Brandon. This is Patrick Gaffney speaking.
Oh, that's weird, Patrick. Your name shows up as Brandon, so that's strange.
Bizarre. Well, Brandon can go after me then. So, I appreciate the work. It's a lot better of formatting than we've had in years past, and I think we're making a lot of good headway. I am mostly in agreement with these proposals. I do think the hump tulip should be on the same timeline as the rest of the Chehalis Basin and have that as a March 31st closure as well. And I think we need to implement selective gear rules starting February 1st and not January 1st. I think it's unfair to prohibit bait when there's such a high percentage of hatchery steelhead in our river systems and late run coho salmon. Other than that, I'm glad we're not using fishing from a floating device, implementing that into our rules. I think that was a poor science experiment that didn't work out. Other than that, that's all I have to say for the Chehalis Basin.
Awesome. Thanks for your comments, Patrick.
Thanks, Patrick. I updated your name. Our next hand is from Bob. Bob, go ahead.
Hey guys, thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
Yep,
We got you, Bob.
Perfect, because I'm in Yellowstone in Montana, so this is so thank you very much for all you guys have done. I appreciate the format. I appreciate everything, all the work you guys are doing going forward. Most of my conversation will be regarding the North Coast. I appreciate the change in the date. I am happy with the March 31st date change. However, we've talked last time about using emergency regulations if we were ever going to open our systems a little bit more. I don't think I need to remind everybody that our North Coast systems are in a much better place than our South Coast rivers. And I think somehow we're being somewhat penalized by those systems being down a little bit. So I would like to look at a little bit further, like even an April 15th date, and then using emergency regulations to close us down to March 31st when our forecasts are not there. Just a couple years ago, we had phenomenal forecasts and phenomenal fishing that we could have easily been open to April 15th, still met our escapement and so forth. So, I would like to at least look at that. I'm a little bit concerned with an emergency openers on forecasts. When we look at the word permanent rules, to me, they're permanent. And I don't see a change moving forward when we have good escapements and so forth. I don't see a change of us opening up. We miss out on an opportunity to fish when our systems can handle it and so forth. So there's that one. The other one that I was kind of actually shocked when I went through there was this rule of February, the end of February on the upper hoe. I'll remind you again that last 7 years, we've met our escapement in the hoe. When we've had fishing from no boats, when we've had fishing from boats, we've still met our escapement. This closure on the upper hoe is, I don't think, as warranted as it may seem. I think it also is confusing because you have systems to the north, both the Bogus Shield, the Kalawa, and the Solduck, that have no fishing from floating devices in their upper reaches of their rivers, yet they're open, and you're going to close the hoe down. And so I think uniformly, it would be better to leave that open through. Now, the South Fork, I can see shutting down the end of February. That's kind of like going into the park line when you look at the South Fork of the Kalawa, North Fork of the Kalawa, up into the park of the Bogus Shield River, and making that uniform. So the February 28th hoe closure, I think, is a little concerning that we're looking at that. And I remind you that we already have additional regulations on that section of that river, right? So the rest of the rivers, we can fish from a boat, we can do all the stuff. However, that section, we can't fish from a boat. And it's already a rule, and it's been a rule for a while, and it's actually proven to work up there. And the work that we've done on the hoe is what's turned it around. And I'm not sure that we need to do additional work when we continue to meet our escapements. I think that's really about it for right now. I'll just wait to see what other people have to say. Thank you very much for your time, guys.
Awesome, Bob. Thanks a lot. And try and keep, one eye looking out. There's crazy buffalo there in Yellowstone. Stay safe, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob. Our next hand is from Chris. Chris, go ahead.
Looks like you're still, there you go, Chris.
We can't hear you, Chris, if you're saying something. It does look like you're unmuted, though. It looks like you might need to leave and come back in. Sometimes Zoom's funny syncing up with audio. We will go to the next hand. Josh, go ahead.
Hi guys, thanks for all you're doing. Glad to be here again. I just want to start by saying I'm glad to see you guys are kind of moving towards that March 31st across the board. I think that's a good step instead of doing the March 15th. Also, in strong support of the early closure on the upper hoe and the South Fork. For the South Fork and the hoe, at least, above Morgan's, I would even push for February 15th closure instead of the end of February, but I'm really glad we're thinking about an early closure up there. A lot of those spawning fish are definitely getting caught, and it's a tough time for them. And then also just kind of want to reiterate what Andy was saying. Would like to see more than no fishing out of boats, or if we are going to allow fishing out of boats, go to something that says no bobbers or no weights or something to try to just reduce our impact on these fish. And I think that's about all I have for now. So thanks for listening to my comments and everything.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate those suggestions.
Okay, our next hand is from Brian. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yep, we have you.
Great. First of all, I want to thank you. I echo some other comments for putting on these meetings and basically for listening to us. You know, we've seen some adjustments that you've made, and I think there's definitely improvements that have been made since the last meeting. So I really appreciate that, and also that you came out with a something more concrete to look at. You know, it really helps to be able to look at that and to I just got a chance to look at it this evening, so I'm still trying to digest it. So this is kind of my preliminary reactions to it. Um, Obviously, I prefer the March 31st date to the March 15th date. However, I'm just reluctant to lose all of April, to tell you the truth. I've spent some really nice days out there in April, and I know there's still some fresh fish coming in, and especially the lower Hoe and some places. So I'd like to see if there's maybe some opportunity to refine that a little bit, to see if there could be an opportunity to leave April open. And I'd reiterate my concern that I've been voicing to this department for 30 years now about balancing exploitation rates across the return time. And I know that's a tricky thing to do when you're thinking about Celts and everything else, and you want a uniformity, and I appreciate there's some competing interest out there, but I do think that it's something we really need to think about so we don't have fishery selectivity. And those early fish that come in, of course, they have more fishing pressure from at least the recreational standpoint because they're in the river longer. So it's a tough nut to crack, but I hope you'll keep that in mind. And I just got to say one thing. You know, I've had a long time history of advocating about that, but I look back at something from 85 years ago. The first study that was done by the old Washington Department of Fish and Game, Game Department, by Potsky and Miggs. It was on Puget Sound steelhead, but I think it's applicable to the coast. You know, they said that this is a series of races that come in, and the objective was to take a little bit of each component and not materially affect any of them. So I'll leave it there on that one. I appreciate you listen to a lot of people. I don't personally need the bait opening, but that you've provided some of that opportunity to focus on the hatchery fish. I suggest maybe there's a little bit of room to refine that instead of having it across the board. Maybe there's some more targeted areas that could withstand fishing with bait and maybe not needed in other places. I too, like Mr. Kratzer, am kind of skeptical of emergency openings. I think there's bureaucratic inertia and a precautionary principle that once it's in a regulation, it's much easier to ratchet it down than to open it up. And I was hoping to see some more trade-offs presented. I was very much opposed to the no boat fishing regulations kind of applied across the board, but I do think there's some room and some trade-offs that you might consider. If we want to keep it open a little bit later into April, maybe there's some room to have permanent regulations in some areas to have no boats, especially where fish may be staging up for quite a bit of the time. And your biologists certainly know where those places are, and some people like the longtime guides out there that are out there every day know that. So I think there's some refinements that could take place that maybe could keep the seasons open a little bit longer. And I'm speaking mainly about the North Coast here where I come up and fish. I think those are my main comments. I would like to, when you did the proviso plan, part of that was this idea about using an integrated population model and management strategy evaluations to kind of lay out a suite of options and alternatives and stuff like that. And I was really hoping to see more of that out there because there is a lot of trade-offs to be made here. And I don't know what's become of that, and maybe you can speak to that a little bit, but the way it was presented is that there would be these options presented and trade-offs presented and risk profiles presented, and it seemed like a really good tool to frame the discussions. And I don't see any of that presented here tonight. I'm just kind of wondering if that's something that might be explored. But anyway, those are my main comments, and I thank you again for the opportunity to present them.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Brian. Really appreciate all your comments and thoughts. I'll touch on the proviso thing there. Quite simply, we asked for that money, but did not receive it from the legislature in order to do any of that work. So a lot of that proviso work, it still sits where it is. It's work we'd like to do, but we haven't been funded to do that yet.
Fair enough. Thanks for that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. That was our last hand for the moment. Just a reminder, the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. And that prompted a hand from Ed. Ed, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
We got you.
Oh, hello.
Yep, we can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, great. Thanks again for doing this. It really, we all appreciate being in the loop on the process of setting these seasons. I still maybe a little bit more eloquently. One is when they no fishing from a boat study on the Hoe.
I'm sorry, Ed,
Can
if
you
that
hear me?
was, I'm having a real hard time picking you up. You're a little bit garbled.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can.
There, that should be better. Hello.
Yep, that is better now.
Yeah.
Hello. Okay, great. So was that on the days that there was no boat fishing,
I'm really sorry, Ed, man, but I'm getting like every 3 words. It seems like it's okay right at the beginning and then kind of fades out. Is that just me or is other people experiencing that?
connection?
Yeah, I think it's a poor connection, Chad. I'm getting the same on my end.
Okay. We're having a really hard time hearing you, Ed. If you have the ability, maybe log in and log back out. And if not, please try and maybe submit your comments through the website.
He dropped, so I don't know if his service dropped the Zoom or if he left and maybe he'll log back in and raise his hand again. But that was the only other hand that was raised.
Okay, well, I think I'll just remind folks all the materials and everything that we presented tonight, that we presented at the last meeting, the pre-proposal document that Mark spoke to, really detailed, lays out basically where we are with the pre-proposal for tonight for discussion and feedback. Really want to encourage people to give us their thoughts and opinions on what they're seeing. Don't need to do that just tonight. We'll be collecting that feedback on our website, as Mark suggested, all the way up until the 20th, till we file that pre-proposal. And even then, folks, want to remind everybody that that's not the end, right? That's just our proposal that we start the commission process with, and there'll be plenty of opportunity to provide your comment directly to the commission or to us as we walk through that the rest of the the rest of the fall into the winter season. So I'll check with Leah and see if I talked long enough to inspire any other folks, or if I think there was Ed and there was a Chris who we both had problems hearing earlier, right?
Yeah, and that we actually have 2 hands raised. Let's go to Bill. Bill, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Bill.
I just want to mention Wynuchi mitigation. What- Is that still ongoing, or is that a deal that's been buried? Because that was supposed to be a 60,000 plant for 30 years on the Wynuchi with that 2.4 million. And the last thing I knew, nothing's been spent. I don't know what's going on. The last article I read was 2019, and that's when Larry Phillips and Ron Warren talked about Wynuchi mitigation. Would you care to comment, or is that a dead subject?
Welcome, Bill. Nice to hear from you. I wish I could see you and see the can. But yeah, no, not a dead subject as far as I'm concerned. Wynuchi mitigation, we're intimately involved in conversations with our co-managers, trying to get that one across the finish line. I'm hopeful that we'll have some information and a plan and a signing to roll out to everyone here over the next few months. And we're really trying to anticipate starting to achieve the objectives of that plan in terms of the hatchery production, either this brood year or the next. And that's where we're at right at this point in time. Right now, that plan is kind of drafted and it's sitting in front of all the lawyers at this moment.
Can you still hear me?
I can.
You know, that's been since 2091. Guys, if you don't move faster than that, the Steelhead don't have a chance. I'll tell you that.
Yep, understand this, Bob. It's been a long road on Wynuchi mitigation, and I think there's plenty of frustration by everybody all around that we haven't been able to get this across the finish line. Know that it's a huge priority of the region to get that agreement done and signed and moving forward.
I don't know if you view that as negative, but I would say 33 years is not very quick.
Yep, appreciate that, Bill.
I'm 84. I would like to at least catch one fish out of mitigation money before I move. You know where I'm moving. Thank you, guys. Try to do
Thank
what
you.
you can. Bye.
Thank you, Bill. It looks like we have another hand up from Bob. Bob, go ahead. That's our last hand for right now.
Okay, thanks. I have a question. In the beginning of the deal, part of the deal was, talking about changing and getting permanent rules into effect, which I appreciate the permanent rules. And it actually helps everybody. And I know how much it will really help the department not have to be jumping through hoops and all that kind of stuff. I do believe the emergency regulations are something that we just aren't going to ever get away from based on forecasts and so forth. And when you look into the Columbia system, they happen all the time. There's that. But the other one I had was just a question, and I know you can't divulge much, but one of the comments in the beginning was part of the reasons of these permanent rules is to, I don't want to say the word appease, but in working with your tribal negotiations. And I'm curious to how much these changes that we've looked at in our fisheries over the last 4 years have been from requests through tribal negotiations versus state negotiate, or I guess state type stuff. I mean, are the tribes pushing for a lot of this stuff like hard, or is it just conversations? Or like I said, I know you can't divulge a whole lot.
No, thanks, Bob. I wouldn't say none of this. Really, what we're doing when the reference to co-manager is really just a reference to those co-manager annual management plans that we agree to, or fishery management plans that we agree to around Steelhead, and just making sure that our permanent rules are consistent with those agreements that we agree to annually. And for the last few years, mostly relative to April and some of the other changes that have occurred, the permanent regs, what was in pamphlet, did not match what was in the co-manager signed agreement in terms of how we had agreed to manage the fishery moving forward. So it was less so a point out to, hey, we're being driven one way or another. It was more so just to point out that we need these permanent regs to be updated so they match what we're putting currently in co-manager agreements, not that there's additional moves that we need to make on top of, what we're talking about tonight. So
Okay.
the simple answer to that question is no, we're not being driven here by co-manager conversations. This is really driven by our need internally to clean up our regulations in light of the current stock status. I mean, it just, yeah. That's the simple problem statement.
Okay. So I appreciate all that. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
When you look at the dates that we're talking about utilizing, and I think most of the state people that are on this call recognize that I'm a conservation-based type angler, but I do also advocate for fishing rights for all anglers when they are appropriate and when they can be utilized. The Chehalis system is always closed at the end of March. That's a normal closing date. It's been a normal closing date for years and years and years and years. The North Coast was April 15th on the Hoe and April 30th on the Quileute system. That was been our normal closing dates for a very, very long time. And it wasn't until 5 years ago when we went into the emergency rules effect that those dates changed. And I know I keep saying this, but even in those time frames, when we went to emergency rules, we were meeting our escapements before we went into emergency rules, and we're still meeting our escapements today, unless this particular year coming up that we don't have all of our data collected yet, whether we didn't make it this year, which for the Quileute system would be the second time in I don't know how long. And for the Hoe would be this, it would be the first time in the last like 7 or 8 years. So that's why we keep talking about April being a significant closure for the North Coast, and how it is a little bit tough for a lot of us when we know we keep meeting our escapements. And then the last meeting, I talked about those fish that are spawning prior to the March 15th date, that we don't utilize those numbers wholeheartedly. So a lot of us know that there's actually more fish spawning than what we're actually probably getting. So and in saying that, I mean, the reason I keep pushing for the non-permanent rules of April and using it more as an emergency rules is because we have had some forecasted seasons here in the last handful of years that were really favorable for the fish, and we had really good escapement numbers, and yet we were closed and not able to fish for those particular timeframes. If we continue down that road, I would still advocate for something in the Solduck River, particularly, partly because of the spring Chinook that are there. And so either if you close it March 31st, I would propose opening it. And I know this is a Steelhead conversation, but opening it April 15th for spring Chinook. And I know that Chad, you and I have talked about Celts and the Celts being an issue and all that kind of stuff. And I would ask the question, and like you and I can talk at a separate time, but I would ask the question, are we the proven issue with kelts numbers not returning in the numbers that they used to, or is it ocean conditions? And if it's ocean conditions, then, you know, where closing us down isn't really changing the issue. And so I just kind of throwing some of that stuff out there.
Yeah, no, thanks, Bob. Appreciate all your comments there. I think I'll leave the kind of biological conversation around Celts. We can do that maybe offline, and circle back to that one. What year and I conversations. I think the only thing, you know, relative that I'd say to all your comments is really just where we are with escapements this last year. You're pretty close there on the Quileute. It's actually looking like we're going to come in maybe right at escapement or a little below, probably not above. I would put my money at this point in time that we'll be a little bit below the escapement. And what I'm hearing from the bio staff, Catherine and Randy, is that would be the fourth time in the data series since 1978 that had happened. And then relative to the hoe, it looks like that we will be a few fish short of escapement on that one too. Numbers are still a little squishy, and we're trying to work through the last little bit of QA QC so we can finalize these escapement estimates. We have most of these escapement estimates scheduled to be finalized by the end of August as we think about our annual process with the co-manager. So we're getting pretty close, but it looks like we missed it on the hoe this year. So that's a little concerning. And then you're right in your characterization. As we turn our eyes south, it gets worse in terms of the escapements estimation relative to last year. Both Willapa and Grays Harbor are probably falling anywhere between 50 to 70% of escapement is what we know right now. So kind of viewing all this stuff under that lens of returns from last year as well, Bob. So.
Right. Perfect. Yeah, I just don't want to make, I want to be smart. I want to save steelhead. Obviously, I want my grandson to be able to fish for steelhead, and I want to be able to do it for a long time, and they're special fish and everything. I just don't want to go so far down the road that even when we get numbers back, we don't ever come back. You know, we've had good returns, you know, where we didn't see any change in what we had, and there were still fish there to be caught, and we met our escapement by a fair amount of fish. And so, like I said, I mean, I already shared the fact that I'm very skeptical of opening fisheries, and I'm very skeptical of if we close April that we'll never see it again. And even when we have the fish back, we won't say it again because we'll use the idea of by closing April, see, we've done our work, and we're going to use that as a conservation portion, in which I appreciate that. I do believe that, you know, the angler should have an access to some fish if there are opportunities there to have that access without putting them over the top. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Bob. A few other hands went up during that time. Our next hand is Ed. Ed, do we got you this time?
Hello. Do you got me now?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, great. Yeah, so sorry about earlier. I live on a mountain and sometimes my internet goes out. Yeah, hearing Bob's last comment, that was pretty great. That was something another thing I wanted to bring up. Is that I've never noticed any transparency about the co-manager harvest. You know, we can easily go online and look at the creel reports. But I've never seen any numbers about how many fish are actually harvested in these rivers. And I'm really curious to see if these you know, these season restrictions, gear restrictions, any type of restrictions are matched in any way by the co-managers. Because I know, you know, I spend a lot of times on these rivers on the coast, and you know, even when fishing's not open, I just like going out there because they are such beautiful places. And many times we're recreational catch and release fishing, which is purported to have a 10% mortality rate at the very high end of the spectrum, is closed. But there's gill nets in the river, which, I'm pretty sure those have 100% mortality rate, if not even higher, because, fish drop out of the nets, they get eaten by seals before somebody gets the net. And, I fully understand that it is their right to do so. But if I remember correctly, the Bolt decision mentioned that it was the harvestable surplus was to be split 50-50 between co-managers. And I know in the past when recreational fishing is closed, the netting condition continues and sometimes even increases. So I'm just curious if there will be any type of co-managing in that regard.
Thanks, Ed. I think my initial response to that is the agency is supportive of treaty and tribal fisheries. We work together to co-manage and come up with management plans that we both feel are sustainable, and we connect and talk about those in season and make adjustments necessary as necessary. And then the other thing I would say is we're here tonight focused on our fisheries and what we need to do to manage our fisheries. I definitely don't want to turn the focus or the spotlight onto treaty or tribal fisheries, because that's not what we're here to discuss tonight, and their impacts. So respectfully, I think I'll just leave it at that.
I understand that, but we are discussing our own impact, so that it just, that's something to think about. Another thing that I really want to talk about, is the, it's going to sound like it's not on topic, but it's the Deschutes River. I'm sure most people listening are going to be familiar with the Deschutes River. I've personally never been there, but I do know that it is one of, if not the most famous steelhead river in the continental United States, outside of maybe the Skagit, but I won't mention that because that's a whole nother town hall. And the interesting thing about the Deschutes is that it has had no fishing from the boat regulations since maybe the 40s. I'm not really sure. I haven't been able to find out exactly when those regulations went in. But the Deschutes is a massive river, and it gets
Hey,
a
Ed,
lot of traffic. Yes, sir?
Sorry, man. I don't want to cut you off. I really don't want to mean to, but this meeting, we're focused on coastal steelhead systems. Deschutes is not part of the rulemaking proposal moving forward. We're just talking about systems east of the Elwha and north of basically Willapa Bay, not including Deschutes.
Yes, sir. I completely understand that. And if you just listen to me for a second.
Sure.
So the Deschutes has had no fishing from the boat for many, many, many years, for so long that nobody even argues about it. And it's also a river that gets a massive amount of angler traffic from Oregon, from Washington, from all over the world. Yet it's a river that rarely closes. It's typically open year round. It's closed a few times when there's really, really bad returns, but other than that, it stays open. Another thing about the Deschutes is that it has a limited amount of guide permits that can guide there. It's not that you can just go fill out the form, get your CPR card, and all of a sudden you're a guide. There's more that goes into that. And yet, it's got a relatively solid, healthy steelhead run. And that's just a thing that I think people should think about.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Ed. And that was our last hand.
All right. Well, just one more plug, I think, here for how to comment relative to any of the stuff we've discussed tonight. As we mentioned earlier, all the material is available on our website. The presentation, the recording of our meeting on the 17th, this pre-proposal document that we've been discussing tonight, as well as the presentation we shared tonight, is all available on our website. Sometime likely before COB tomorrow or first thing Monday, this recording will be available on the website for folks to review. And once again, you know, a variety of different ways for folks to provide comment. I hope people take that seriously. We are reviewing those comments as they come in and thinking about this and having discussions. We're pretty excited about how this has worked out so far and the level of engagement. And so pretty pleased that, you know, we get to a decent outcome at the end, right? So Mark, did I miss anything or anything you want me to, I should touch on, or you want to fill in for me?
Just again, please provide comments. We worked hard to get that that detailed document out there for folks to consider, you know, down to the reach. So make sure you're sharing that with your friends who are steelhead anglers as well, just so we can get as many comments and consider as much opinion out there as we can prior to setting on a final proposal. So, and just thanks again to everybody for being here and providing comments. Thanks, Chad.
Oh, thank you all. Thank you all. Thanks, Mark, for all the work that you've done to get us here. And thanks, everybody, for joining. I'll check with Leah, see if there was any more hand that popped up while we were rambling.
No, no more hands.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I think we'll let everybody have the rest of their evening back. It's been a pleasure. Once again, please check out the document, look at the proposal, send in those comments, and we'll see everybody soon. Thanks.